So I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this, but my finger is really messed up. I injured my PIP joint on my ring finger the other month. I also hurt the tendon on my thumb and wrist, and I've been dealing with that, which really sucks. Now these aren't the only injuries I have. I've got a lot of old lingering injuries. My elbow, my shoulder, my knee, my ankle. My body is kind of messed up. And you know, when I'm riding gravel, it can get kind of painful. Now, gravel races, they are battles of attrition. So not only do you need to endure suffering in your lungs and your legs, but throughout your entire body. Even if you are lucky enough to be injury-free, sitting on your bike for half a day or more, it's gonna hurt. So if you can improve your comfort, you're definitely gonna also improve your performance because you're gonna be able to focus more on pedaling hard. Now I've been hunting for little comfort upgrades for years now, and I've settled on some things on my bike that I think really improve the ride quality. Before we get into that, if you are interested in any of the components that I'm gonna be talking about, we carry most of them here at theproscloset.com. We have a coupon code that you can use for $50 off your order of $200 or more, so be sure to check that out. I'm gonna go over sort of the upgrades front to rear on my bike that I've tested and experimented with to try and alleviate some of the pain I feel. Before we get into the fun stuff, I do wanna say the component that is gonna make the biggest difference in your comfort is tires. Now we already went over tires in a previous video, and in there I said, run the widest tire your bike can fit. If you care about comfort, that's the way to go. It lets you run lower pressures, which improve your comfort a lot. If you want a little more, you can even add tire inserts. This will let you run even lower pressures, and that foam will add a little bit of damping to your whole bike too. And once you get your tires dialed in, you're running the right width, the right pressure, and you still want more, that's when you should probably start looking at other components. Now let's start at the front end of the bike, because that's really what I'm worried about with my finger and my wrist. See on my cockpit here, I'm running carbon handlebars. So I run carbon handlebars on pretty much every bike I own. The big reason is because they do absorb a little bit more vibration than alloy handlebars, and especially carbon handlebars designed specifically for gravel tend to have a little more flex designed into them. If you look at my bars and I really push on them, you can see them, hopefully see them bend a little bit. And that actually adds a lot of comfort to the front end of your bike. I've been testing 4 different bars over the last 2 years. They are the Lauf Smoothie Bar, the Envy G Series Gravel Bar, the Easton EC90AX handlebar, and the FSA K-Wing AGX. So of those 4 that I've been trying, the Lauf Smoothie Bar that actually it came on this bike is probably the most comfortable bar of them all. It has the most flex, so if comfort is your biggest concern, I think that's the best choice. I ended up choosing to go with the FSA K-Wing AGX. I think the comfort is actually pretty close, but the main reason I really liked it was the shape of the bar. If you look at it, and I'll show you this one here. Well, first of all, it's got a little arrow shaping to the top of the bar, which I think looks really cool. But the big thing I really liked was this cutout by where the hoods mount. And what that's for is you can put your forearm there when you're doing the little arrow tuck in the hoods. And that's really comfortable. And there's also a cutout in the drop there. And for me, when I'm in the drops, I actually end up getting a lot of pressure on the outside of my palm there. And that cutout actually relieved a lot of that pressure for me, which was, I've actually never had a bar with that before, and I really liked it, so that's why I'm going with this. Now, carbon handlebars, pretty expensive. These ones retail for over $300. They're on sale on our site right now for $250, so that's why I snagged them. But there is a cheaper option if you want to keep, the bars already on your bike, and that is bar tape. Now, I always swap to Cushier bar tape before Unbound. Right now I've got cheap bar tape on these because I'm testing them out. I didn't want to waste any tape if I didn't like the bars. But the 3 I generally recommend: the Silka Cuscino, I think it's Italian, the Lizard Skins DSP, and the Wolf Tooth Supple bar tape. I've been using lizard skins for probably 10 years now. This is one of my favorite bar tapes. It's super tacky, super comfortable. I am probably gonna try out this Silka Cushy tape for Unbound this year though, because I've been using it on my road bike. I'm super impressed with how comfortable this tape is too. I don't think it's quite as tacky as lizard skins, but it might be a little bit cushier. If you want maximum cushion though, definitely this wolf tooth supple bar tape. It is the thickest bar tape I've ever seen. It's 5 millimeters thick. When you wrap your bars, they become enormous. But if you're looking for maximum cushion, this is probably the best option. Now, the other way you could go, if you want a little more comfort, is a suspension stem. Now, there's this one right here. This is the Cane Creek eeSilk. I actually rode this stem for quite a while last year on my old titanium gravel bike. And you know, I kind of conceptually was not that into the idea of a suspension stem at first, you know, because your bars are moving. But it actually doesn't feel like you'd expect. You kind of just have softness. It doesn't feel like your cockpit's like falling over. So I've actually been really impressed with how this stem feels. It adds a lot of comfort because it's got 20 millimeters of travel, which is quite a lot. And it uses an elastomer that you can change. There's different durometers, you know, to suit your body weight or your riding preferences. I've also tried the Redshift shock stop stem. I'll be honest, they kind of feel the same to me, so I'm not sure I would pick one over the other. So I'll say buy the eeSilk because we carry it. One thing to note is that it has a lot of stack height. So you want to make sure you have enough steer tube for this stem. Also, definitely on this bike, I cut my steer a little too short to run it, but it doesn't matter because this bike I also need a 120 millimeter stem, and the eeSilk does max out at 100 millimeters. That's okay because this bike has a Lauf fork. I'll get into that a little bit later. If you want, there's also an eeSilk with this little lockout. So you can change it from soft to firm. I didn't really use it when I was using the stem. I'd left it open all the time, but if you really want to stiffen it up for like road sections, it's probably a pretty good option. A suspension stem is gonna do a lot to really take the edge off the roughest gravel. I think suspension stem plus carbon bar plus really cushy tape, you can handle almost anything. But if you want a little bit more cushion, that's probably when you should start looking at a suspension fork. There's a few popular options on the market, the RockShox Rudy, Fox Taper Cast, or like what I have, the Lauf Grit SL fork. This fork uses carbon leaf springs, so it's a lot lighter than an air fork. There's no stiction, and I think this fork is really great on sort of small bumps and chatter, stuff like washboards or like golf ball sized gravel. It's a big reason why I bought this bike was because of these little hand issues I have. I wanted a little extra comfort. If you do need to handle bigger hits though, stuff like really big potholes and rocks, stuff you find on single track trails, that sort of stuff, that's where an air fork is really a lot better. I don't think it's entirely necessary for something like Unbound 200, but when you want maximum comfort, something worth considering. Now, what if it's your backside that you're worried about? Well, the first thing I would look at is a carbon seat post. I'm running the FSA SLK seat post on here. Just like carbon handlebars, they're able to flex a little bit more than alloy seat posts. So if I push down on it, you can see a bend under my weight, and that's gonna add a little bit of extra comfort. But if that's not quite enough, the thing I would look at, this is a Cane Creek eeSilk seat post. This one is the eeSilk Plus. It's got 35 millimeters of travel. There's a regular eeSilk seat post that has 20 millimeters of travel. I rode this for about 1,000 miles last year on my old bike, and I was really impressed with this seat post, more so than the stem even. It isn't quite like rear suspension on a mountain bike, but when you're riding really rough terrain, single track trails, it does actually feel like it helps the bike float a bit underneath you, and it makes it so you can go faster. I think it's a solid product. I don't think you need the carbon version. Definitely with the little suspension there. The alloy version, which is a little cheaper, is great. Carbon, if you're counting grams, then sure, go that route. I'm not running this seat post on my Lauf this year. The big reason for that is because it only comes in a 12mm setback. There's no 0mm option. With my bike, I run my saddle in a position where this has too much setback for me to get the position I want. But that's okay. I am more worried about, the front side and the back side. Got spanked a lot as a kid, so I got buns of steel. But you don't need buns of steel if you have the right saddle. I am running this Specialized Power Mirror Pro saddle. It uses this 3D printed foam, which I've been really impressed with. I started testing the saddle last year, and I liked it so much, I bought 3 more. So I have one of these on every single one of my bikes. Now the big reason I like these 3D printed saddles is because the density of the foam actually changes really progressively as you move forward on the saddle. So you'll see, the edges here around the cutout, and then especially the tip of the nose, they get really soft. And when I'm doing really hard efforts, I tend to scoot up on the saddle, and it causes some discomfort on traditional saddles. And with this one, I don't get hot spots. I don't get what you could call the sleepy pee-pee. It is legit the most comfortable saddle I've ever used. Definitely the big downside though is it's super expensive. For me, it was worth it, but I'll show you what I was using before the saddle. And that's actually the Specialized Power Mimic saddle. Now this Mimic saddle, it has different foam here on the nose, and you'll see it does sort of what I was talking about with that 3D print saddle. So it's really firm under the sit bones where you need it, but as you move forward on the saddle up to the nose, you can see it gets a lot softer there, and it's super soft, especially in the center there. So it does sort of a similar thing. This is, marketed as a women's saddle, but dudes can definitely use it. I used it, I really liked it. Ultimately, the most important thing is that your saddle fits properly. We have a little video specifically on Specialized saddles, but it can be applied to pretty much any saddle, explaining how to find a saddle that fits. I like these little snub nose power saddles because my position is, sort of on the aggressive end of things, and I find the shorter saddle really works. Now, since I brought it up, the last thing I do want to talk about is bike fit, because bike fit has a big influence on your overall comfort. Hopefully your bike is the right size, but even if it is, you probably do need to tweak a few components, usually your saddle and your stem, to get your bike to fit comfortably. Now it's possible to figure out the ideal bike fit at home with enough patience and experimentation. The one tip I want to give you is the goal of all my bike fits is to minimize the amount of weight I'm carrying on my hands. Now the way I do that is I start with saddle setback. I don't care about knee over pedal spindle or anything like that. The main goal of my saddle setback is to find a point where my upper body is balanced so that while I'm pedaling, I can let go of the handlebars, and my upper body doesn't move, it doesn't drop or lift up, and I don't have to scoot forward on the saddle to regain balance. Now, it depends a lot on your torso length, but there is probably a point where you can set your saddle to find that ideal balance point. And once you find that, I start tweaking the front end with stem length to find a bar position where I have very little weight on my hands and I can ride comfortably. For me, it looks pretty low, it's slammed obviously, but it actually feels really good. I don't have that much weight on my hands, and that means I have more energy in my legs to dedicate to pedaling because my core is holding me up and not my triceps or shoulders or whatever. This is like a fit philosophy that I learned about from reading Steve Hogg's website. Definitely worth checking out if you're trying to dial in your fit at home. Steve Hogg has a lot of great tidbits that can help you sort things out. It is definitely possible to get your bike fit dialed in at home, but if you're struggling with pain and discomfort, and you just can't seem to get it right, then it might be worth going to a professional bike fitter. They have experience and they give you an outside perspective that can help solve issues. I was having a lot of knee pain before the Unbound 200, so I went to retool, and my fitter Jason was able to figure out that I needed some pedal spacers and a longer spindle to straighten out my leg while I was pedaling, and that resolved a lot of the knee issues I had. And that let me focus on, getting upgrades to figure out how to cushion my hands and my butt and get rid of all these aches and pains. But what about my aching stomach? Well, that is a matter of nutrition and hydration, which is what we'll cover next time. So hopefully you stick around. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.